Action.
Aim for the right one.
All right.
Action.
All right. Do a rapid fire. Action.
It is kind of a weird sitting position too, because I feel kind of slanted, but it's fine. It feels good. It's important to have some good posture, you know.
Yeah.
That's something I've worked on for a while, is my posture, because it's so easy to neglect it, and years down the road, it'll definitely catch up to you, you know. You just feel more confident and more professional when you have good posture.
Yeah.
And people notice that, and it helps your image overall, and also it just helps your body feel better. So
Yeah.
something I'm trying to be more cognizant about is posture.
I always
How
try to
about
do
you?
that too, but
Good.
it's like it doesn't like stay as a continual thing for me. I need to make it into a continual
Right.
thing.
It has to be like a muscle memory thing.
Like, yeah, so like just now when you said that, I feel like people talk to me about that a lot. But it's like, when they say that, that's when I go like from this
That's
to
what I
this.
should do.
And
And then it
so-
feels kind of weird at first.
So maybe they're staying on top of it for me. I don't know.
I don't know. I was just thinking about it because of the way that we're kind of sitting, and it's just, you know, I don't know. I guess it depends what mood you're into. You don't always have to have perfect posture, but I do think it's a good habit to have. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, Ian, great having you here.
Thank you. I'm glad we
Absolutely.
finally did this. You know, it's overdue, so it should
Yeah.
be fun.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll just say, for those of you who don't know, we met at work, and we just get into all these kinds of conversations, so we thought we might as well record it. Anyways, that's basically the gist of it. But
Yeah, because it's always a deep, meaningful conversation. You know, that appears out of nowhere. It seems like we could just go on and on forever. So
Yeah,
it makes for a perfect podcast situation. Honestly, it's really cool.
yeah. So you better subscribe, or else. No, I'm kidding. But yeah. So I don't know what you want to start with, but I mean, obviously the most relevant news is like the Charlie Kirk stuff.
Yeah, it seems like the world has been going downhill fast. And something interesting, you know, that me and my father were talking about was how desensitized you can become to all the doom and gloom.
Yeah.
And it just seems like, you know, every day it's a new news story, something terrible going on in the world, and then a couple days later that's forgotten, and it's a new terrible thing that's happening. And it really is unfortunate how desensitized we are becoming to that. And, you know, you know, what sucks is there's not really clear-cut answers for how you should respond, or, you know, what you should do after something terrible like that happens.
Yeah.
I do think it's good to talk about it and to get it off your chest, but
Absolutely.
there's not a simple solution or anything that'll just make everything magically better, you know?
Yeah, that's right. Except for the one thing, which is of course Jesus, when
Right.
he comes back.
Prayer is always probably the best and only thing that you can really do to impact a situation that's so complicated, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing, like, because I haven't actually looked at the official news sources for the Charlie Kirk stuff yet, just because I know when I see it, I'm gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna be kind of hurt by it, because I know I don't follow the news that often, so I'm maybe not as desensitized to it. But like, I know once I try to make time to focus on the things that matter, like when they do pop up like that. But like, yeah, like I have been seeing like a lot of YouTubers I follow react to it and stuff like that online, you know, and everything, and it's like, yeah, he's definitely making an impact more than I thought than something like that would happen in the near future, which it is happening now. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And the most unfortunate thing I think about the whole situation, first off, his family, you know, I feel absolutely terrible for them, but the future that he had ahead of him was insane. He was just getting started, and he he was already a superstar, and I do think there was potential for him to be a president or whatever the next chapter. He was a hard-working man, like he was laser focused. So I think that really sucks that his future got ripped away from him so quickly. But I do think that him being martyred, and I would say that it is, a martyr level assassination. I do think that him being martyred will carry his legacy very far as well. So there's always a silver lining. I do think a lot of people will look at a lot of things that he said and, really analyze them. And, I do think his voice, his message, and, everything else will be intensified because of him being martyred.
Keep going if you still have more. I just need to turn on the mic.
It wasn't even on?
But we're still recording from the camera,
okay.
Not microphone, so
Microphone wasn't on.
Hey, I'm glad you realized it now instead of like way down the line. But so I mean, it's a really depressing thing, and I've seen a little bit of conspiracy here and there, and and unless you have actual facts, I don't think it's it's good to theorize sometimes, but I don't think it's really that effective to sit here and just speedball random conspiracy theories about stuff. It's more important to focus on the facts and focus on how to make a positive impact out of whatever bad thing that happens, for example, Charlie Kirk being killed.
Yeah.
And, at the end of the day, all he was doing was trying to give out his advice, his opinions, free speech, and he was giving other people the option to come onto his platform, use his platform to debate him. And, I think that's one of the most important things we can do is try to spread truth. And if someone else has another perspective or another truth, they can, try and express that, and we can work together to find solutions to these things. And
so personally, I know I already told you this before, but like this may come as a shock to some people who know that I'm like a Christian and like a devout Christian, but I actually didn't know that much, if anything, about Charlie Kirk before this happened.
Right.
But I will say I feel like I've always been a big fan of the saying, or when people say like, prove me wrong, as long as it's not said in like a toxic way,
right?
Like in sort of like a headstrong way where you're just kind of like, oh, I'm closed-minded, as if you could prove me wrong. Not that is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like when people say like state your case, like say what you need to say to prove me wrong so that I can know for sure if I'm right or not.
Exactly.
Not that the thing is though, like I feel like with God and with Jesus, I feel totally secure in what His truth is. But at the same time, that's even more of a reason to let those people say that. So it helps prove to them also that, hey, this is actually the truth.
Yeah. But, giving people just the opportunity to speak their mind is really important. And, it makes them feel like they're heard, and it allows them to hear you, because when we shut each other out and close off our ears, then that's when, there's no more learning, and there needs to be learning from both sides. No matter if you're right or wrong, there's still something to learn from the opposite viewpoint. So I do think that is one of the most important things you can do, and that's what he was doing. He's going around the country just giving people his viewpoint and letting other people express theirs, and it's so unfortunate that happened to him. He was more popular amongst the younger college age kids, so that's why a lot of older people didn't really know him that well, but he was definitely at the forefront of the debate realm. He was, like I said, a superstar amongst the young people especially. So
I guess I'm a little out of my depth for talking to these young folks about that. I'm just kidding.
But yeah, rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. There's a few things we disagreed on, and but overall, the dude was a amazing guy, and I feel like the news has kind of beat that horse quite a bit, but I think he does deserve his flowers. He does deserve to be remembered, and he does deserve to have his name all over everywhere because of how much of an impact he made on our country. So yeah, rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. You were awesome.
Rest in peace. My thoughts go out to him and his family and everything like that for sure too. And but I was thinking something that we could use as like a bridge from that to this other topic is actually like the fact that obviously this is a horrible tragedy that happened, but like also you gotta remember, of course, that like God allows everything that we see happening to happen. at the same time, though, he is angry at the people who choose to do wrong things. And, of course, we do choose to do wrong things because we have free will, just like the person who did that and everything. Yeah, so I'm curious as far as what your thoughts are on that. Like, for example, like, I don't know, I think there's a verse, and I hate that I'm not remembering exactly which verse it is, but I know it's in Isaiah where they say, like, God creates evil or something, or he created, just like he created the good and he created everything. But I'm curious, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that is a really interesting verse. We'd need to actually pull that up specifically to get all the context around it, because it's a really weird way to phrase it. I'm not sure it literally means that, other than, you know, God created everything.
Yeah.
And I think evil was kind of more of a chain reaction of, you know, with the way that everything has opposites, you know, hot and cold, up and down. The fact that God is all good, the fact that Satan rebelled against God's will, would mean that automatically creates evil out of him doing the opposite of God's will, which is good. So I don't think Satan created evil, but I do think he allowed it to exist, because before him there was no evil, because there was nothing really going on against God's will. So it's a really hard way to phrase it, whether God created evil or Satan created evil.
It's also a hard thing to grasp too, because we have absolutely no real relative example out here in our world as far as what was going on before our world was created when that happened. Right?
Exactly, completely foreign to our way of thinking.
Yeah. But I just think it's fun to think about sometimes, because I think God also likes it when we try to learn more about everything he does. And
I agree with that. I think he does want us to think really in depth about all of these things, you know, because we are made in his image, and I think he enjoys watching us learn and figuring out what his will is deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah, for sure. What was I going to say, though? It was, there was a pastor who once told me that, like, Satan is like somebody who never creates anything. He can only steal what from God has already created.
Yes, I've heard that before as well.
And, like, degrade it or twist it or something into something that's not worth anything, I guess you could say, like death or something. But I guess that's one way to look at it. I think that's probably pretty aligned with what Scripture says. But
so I think I've been thinking a lot about this recently, actually. If we go back to Adam and Eve, there's all kinds of things you can pick apart with their entire story, but I do think it kind of started out, you know, Satan rebelled against God and was kicked out of the kingdom. And I think God and Satan kind of had this moment of like, okay, it's almost like a battle. You know, when you look at the story of Job, they literally did take on a bet almost. I don't mean to downplay these words. It's lack of a better term for a lot of these ways that we phrase things.
You're right.
But I do think it was almost like a bet between God and Satan on, okay, if God created these completely free will individuals, what would they choose? Would they choose to do their own will, or would they choose to do God's will? And I do think that, you know, Satan and God kind of had this bet, for lack of a better word, and that's when Adam and Eve were created. And I do find it very interesting that Adam and Eve did not choose to eat of the fruit just out of their own will. They were actually listening to God. They were doing God's will by not eating it. Their one rule, until Satan came along. The most clever thing that God ever created is how it describes him. The serpent, if you subscribe to the idea it was Satan. He comes along and he tempts them. So I do think it's interesting that, you know, they had to be tempted to go against God's will. And I think that temptation is where all of our sin and our flaws are centered around, is the temptation. So I do think Satan had to go out of his way to try to persuade them into going against God's will. And once they did that, it kind of ingrained sin into our flesh, and now we are wrestling with our flesh and that temptation in a similar way.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting that, you know, Eve didn't come with the idea to do that on her own.
Exactly. Neither did Adam. It wasn't until Eve brought it up to Adam that he was even interested. So just a interesting analysis that I've made about that.
And then there's another thing too, like this is something I've definitely been thinking about a lot because it's sort of like a new doctrine that I've been kind of like we were talking about earlier, like trying to prove wrong in order to see if it's right. And I've been trying to go back and forth in circles in my mind to see if it's right, it's called the doctrine of divine election, which is, I think you and I have talked about it a little bit before, but it's like something that like the Calvinists, it's one of the things that the Calvinists believe. I'm not saying I know or agree with everything the Calvinists say, but like it's the whole thing about like, for example, like you said, like they were doing what God was telling them to do at first, and then Satan comes along and tells them, hey, you should do this, and then they do that. Now, on one hand, you could say, you know, we have free will, so we're not like helpless people who just do what everybody tells us to do.
Right.
But also at the same time, I do feel like that when we are saved, like it's the Holy Spirit that energizes our spirits and motivates us to believe in Jesus and see how he created everything and how we should, like, out of our love, serve him and stuff like that. And we should follow him in that respect and then declare that he is Lord and all that stuff. So I feel like it says in the New Testament, I believe Paul wrote that us being saved is not of our own doing, it's completely God, you know,
Correct.
which is, I think, something that everybody like believes in who's a Christian, but they don't necessarily know how far that goes a lot of times because really, like, when it comes down to it, like, no works that we could do could possibly save us.
Exactly. And I not to cut you off, I don't think that everyone necessarily believes that. I know you're just kind of using that as a phrase.
Yeah.
I do think a lot of people misunderstand that, and they do think, no matter how many times you tell them, your works does not get you into heaven.
Right,
There's
right.
no amount of good works you can do
Yeah.
that will get you into heaven. And it is purely God alone and submitting to God. You know, someone asked me, okay, how do you begin a walk with God, or whatever phrase you want to use there, and I really boiled it down to that one word: submit to God.
Wow.
Because that allows you to no longer look at yourself as your own God that knows everything, but instead you now know that he is the one who knows everything and you know nothing. So I do think it begins, your walk with God really begins with submitting to him and really putting that out there that you don't know anything and he knows everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's very humbling to think that way, but it's also very kind of relieving to think that way too.
Yes, because all the pressure's off of you. Now you know, well, I have a master who can take care of me. I just have to let him take care of me, you know? And, like you said, it is relieving, and it is a little... It is hard to fully submit, and I don't think anyone's fully mastered that, you know, and it's easier said than done, but I do think that is a real simple way to look at it.
Yeah, for sure. So it's like, anyways, it's just kind of like how, it's like, I guess I kind of ran out of things to say.
Happens.
But anyways, so like submitting to God, that's like basically something that like it can be hard to do, but it's like something that's like totally necessary in life, and you don't realize how necessary until you're actually saved, I think. Like,
even once you're saved, I think you could probably still struggle with that because...
For sure.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic because, and this can segue into another thing that I've been asked about a couple times, and that is, okay, so obviously God can't do everything for us, you know, so at a certain point, you know, you're praying, you're asking God to bless you, protect you, all this stuff, but at a certain point you have to figure things out and do actions that, you know, you think God would want you to do.
Yeah.
So you have to take some accountability. You have to take some action yourself. You can't expect God to hold your hand and do everything for you.
Right.
So there is an interesting balance between figuring out how much to submit and let him control things, and when to, you know, step in and do the things that he's calling you to do. It's not an easy thing to figure out, though.
Yeah.
You know?
It's not easy because he made the world... It still is working up.
Okay, good.
He made the world so complex, which is part of the beauty of the whole thing too.
Yeah.
Like imagine if he just made the world so simple and everybody would know right from the moment they're saved or the moment they are born that, like, hey, this is wrong, this is right, great. Now I just know what to do every time something like that pops up in my life.
Yeah.
But it's not like that at all.
Right.
So that's part of what makes it so. That's part of what makes the real life world such an interesting story. I feel like, you know.
Yeah.
I feel like we're all living in just like this one big story, and the main character is God. You know.
Yes, for sure.
So.
I agree. And, you know, I do think that, like what you said, the world is so interesting. It has a lot of beauty, a lot of tragedy, a lot of everything in between.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I do think we take for granted even the tragedy, the pain, the suffering. I do think we take it for granted because it's a very interesting thing to experience pain, to experience heartbreak, to experience loss. That's all very interesting. You could look at it as like, I got to experience something real, something meaningful.
Yeah.
And even though it felt bad,
Yeah.
you were still given the consciousness and the ability to actually feel something, to for there to be meaning to an aspect of your life. So even the bad, I do think, you know, we should be grateful that we get to experience anything at all, you know.
That's great. It's part of the whole thing, whereas, like, you know, what I always say, which is like, if we don't, and this was before I even came back to Christianity, I kind of realized this towards the end of that period of my life, where I was like, if we don't experience the bad things in life, then how are we going to understand the power and meaning of the good things?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And something like that is such a cliche saying, and it's often overlooked. And I do think anytime you hear a cliche saying, you shouldn't just shrug it off as a cliche saying. You should really analyze the saying, because there's a reason that it's so cliche, because it's so true. And all throughout human history, people have been teaching sayings like that. Like, without the bad, you wouldn't truly value the good. And so I do think anytime you hear something cliche, you should really analyze it and really take it to heart, because it's so easy to be like, oh yeah, everyone says that, and then move on. And really, you know, you should really, like, take a look and try to apply it to your life.
Right. Like when you're in a, you know, it happens to everybody when we're in like a dark circumstance, we feel like we can't get out, trapped. People be like, hang on a second, like, take a moment, like, look at what you actually think life is. Like, there's been good moments. Now you're in one of these, as they call it, valleys, like one of these bad moments. But it's like, I'm not saying that that's easy, because I kind of am using that tone of voice. Sometimes I do that by accident.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, there's been times when I felt like I've been in like the ditch or something, and I'm like, can't get out. And then I just kind of like look around, not just at my surroundings, but like at where I am in time. And I'm like, I remember like, oh yeah, there was a good thing that happened just yesterday.
Yeah.
Or something, you know. And it's like, I don't think that's gonna be the last time a good thing happens.
Exactly.
You know? But,
yeah, it's so easy to throw yourself a pity party. And, you know, something I think about all the time is, like, I don't know about you, but I have an interesting taste in music and movies. I like a movie that has a little bit of sadness, a little bit of pain, and then growth, obviously, and development. But same with music. I like a good sad song. It makes you feel things. So I think, again, it goes back to what I'm saying. Just being able to experience that powerful of an emotion, whether it's sadness or whatever it is, I think you should embrace it, and I think you should try to make the best out of it and use it to grow in life. I really do.
That's great. Especially like what you said about embracing it.
Yeah.
Because it's not just something I think that, I mean, it can be something you acknowledge, but it's not going to hold that much, as nearly as much, like, I don't know, like, what the word is, but it's not going to give you that much more, I guess you could say, emotional power or emotional intelligence over it if you don't embrace it.
Exactly.
Because then you're fully accepting it.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Anyways, yeah, good psychology stuff there too.
Thank you.
But yeah, I wrote down a few things that we might talk about too. So I'm just looking. We've covered like already the first 3 or 4 things. So, but yeah, let's see here. Yeah, I was thinking of. Oh yeah. Well, we were talking about like how God, you know, supposedly created not just the good things and also the bad things, but it's like He's like obviously the ultimate creator, the ultimate artist
of everything.
Yeah. Right? So it's interesting because I stumbled across a video recently that I thought was very interesting, and I thought it to be true as well, what this lady was saying on YouTube. And it's interesting because obviously we're all in the Christian community, we're all obviously aware of how the gender roles have been flipped and topsy-turvy over the last couple of decades.
It's a really weird experience, but it's definitely something noticeable in our society.
Yeah, because I know that you and I grew up in, like, we were born in the same decade, and we grew up with, like, the same cartoons and the same kind of songs and music. So then to see that kind of flip in the 2010s, and now we're here in the 2020s, it's like, whoa. Like, anyways, but yeah, that's besides the point. What I'm trying to say is another thing that I think ended up getting switched and topsy-turvy by the enemy runs back even farther than before all that happened, before we existed. Like, the whole, like, for example, the whole idea about women being the sort of, like, creative, kind of in touch with the whole thing about being an artist and being creative and how that being associated with being in touch with your feminine side is actually, I mean, of course, I'm not saying women can't do that. Of course they can.
Of course.
But it's like, that's actually not necessarily their main role in life. I think that's actually more of the man's role in life.
Interesting.
And I think the women's role is more to sustain and to nurture and stuff like that.
I would agree.
Because if you think about it, men are the ones who are laying out blueprints for buildings. They're doing the construction.
They're creating. Exactly. They're creating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They also, technically, I guess you could say, are doing the creative act when they, create offspring. And then women carry the offspring in them for, like...
And nourish the offspring in them. Right. I would completely agree. And I think I might have brought this point up to you before, but I always think it's very interesting that Jesus himself was a carpenter.
Yeah, there you
because
go.
he was creating. That's exactly what God does. He creates. Just like he built the earth, he when he was here on the earth, he was still building things on the earth. So I always thought that was really interesting that, that was his job. I do think it's important for us as beings created in the image of God to embrace our creative nature, to go out and create something. It doesn't have to be a literal building, but we do need to be creating. That's how God wants us to be. I do believe that.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, on one hand, you've got, like I said, you've got the two genders. This is something, now I'm delving into a different subject now, but it's like you've got the two genders and they have their own like sort of like roles in life, like I said.
100%.
Like, because obviously we're built differently, we think differently.
It's foolish to assume that we're completely the same. And again, to your point, not to say that women can't do certain things that we excel at, and not to say men can't do certain things that they excel at. But there's a clear biological difference, and we're wired differently, for sure.
Yeah. But the thing is the thing that I think is so powerful too, especially since I've been reading Exodus recently, is like, because there's an example of this in there, is that God really takes on both of those roles, and he does like everything that we know about, and then some that we don't even know what he does.
Right.
So it's amazing because, like, like in Exodus, like he lays out these plans for Moses, and he talks about, like, I want you to make posts out of acacia wood, and I want you to overlay the wood with gold and all this stuff. And he lays out like the dimensions of the tabernacle. I want the east side to be like 75 feet long, and the north side to be 150 feet long.
Very specific,
Yeah.
Pretty wild.
So it's like that. But then also he talks about, like, I want the curtains to be made out of fine woven linen, and I want them to be blue, red, and purple, like angels designed on them. So he gets in touch with the feminine part of it too, as well as all the masculine constructing and all that stuff.
And to go back to that point of God's gender, I don't obviously he does. Okay, well, first of all, Jesus was a man, so if you do want to give God a gender, you do give it as Jesus. But then, outside of just Jesus as the actual God of the creator of everything, in that form of him, I do think he's still. You do want to refer to him with masculine pronouns because, for one, he's the father, know, and that's important. The father figure has its specific roles, and he resembles the father. But another way I've looked at it is God is also masculine because of how, he put his here on this earth. So in human beings, the male puts the sperm into the female, and then it grows inside the woman, right? So the male puts the information into the female, and then it grows. Similarly, God put us, he put the information here onto the earth, and then you could view the universe or the earth as Mother Earth because it's where we grow. So
Wow.
God
That's good.
breathed life into us, put the information here, and then we grew into into Mother Earth. So I do think that's really important. If you're going to use gender pronouns, you should refer to God as masculine pronouns, and the earth probably more as mother female pronouns.
Probably.
So
that's
just
amazing.
how I see it.
Yeah, we're kind of like, I feel like anytime you and I have these conversations, we're kind of like interconnecting both of our information we've gathered. Then when we report to each other, it's like, oh, now this connects with that, this connects with this.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
We're getting the bigger picture built more and more.
Yeah.
And that's going to keep happening forever, even past when Jesus comes back, as far as I know. So that's really cool. But yeah, I think that basically covers all the bases. There was just one other thing, which kind of goes with the gender thing too, which is that this may be a completely different subject, so we might save it for another one, but like how I just think it's so fascinating about what the nature of like a contract is versus the nature of what a covenant is, you know? Because a contract is more like, you got to abide by these rules, and then if you break these rules, then this happens, and then this happens, and the focus of it is to abide by the rules. Right. But a covenant is more like, it has rules, yes, but it's not really rules. It's more like, this is what is expected in the relationship. And it's more based on the focus of the relationship rather than the rules. I think that's what it is. And,
interesting.
And it's like, so, like a marriage covenant is like, between the husband and wife, and then also God, of course. And it's not like a contract where it's like, oh yeah, I've got to follow these rules so I can stay in the marriage. That's not like how. If you
break this rule, the marriage the contract isn't breached. It still exists. You just need to fix. I've never really thought about the difference between those two, but I think you're right that with the covenant, it's a consistent growth and effort to keep it going. It's not just one simple laid out contract like you're saying. Yeah,
for sure. But yeah, that's I guess I don't know. I guess that basically covers everything we were going to talk about. Hopefully everything is still got battery life. Yeah. But we'll see. But
check on it.
Yeah, it's been great talking with you, man.
Yeah, man. I can't wait to do more of these. I think it'll be fun. So
yeah, we're gonna get into it again. Sorry, go ahead.
We'll keep them rolling for sure. Yeah,
we're gonna get into it again, and we're gonna talk more about I guess covenants and stuff, some more things, and there's all kinds of things to talk about in the Bible. For those of you who are new to the faith, it's there's just more and more things to unravel. When you think you had an idea of it before you were a Christian, and then you become a Christian, you're like, oh no, I would never have realized this, but now I've got it. It's like, no, you keep going and going.
Yeah, there's no final answer, and not just as a Christian, as a philosopher, which I do consider myself to be one. You start to realize the more you learn, the more you think about things, the less you know. So it's an infinite process, and it's the same with reading scripture. You can think that you got all of the knowledge out of the scripture, but at the end of the day, there's infinite knowledge in there, and the more you do learn from there, the less you realize you actually know, and the more there is to learn.
And it's in a good way.
It's in a good way. You should always continue to seek more knowledge and more wisdom.
Because I think part of the reason why it's in a good way too is because it feels like more and more things are just unraveling, and it's opening it up to you.
Yes.
And you feel like it's not just something that's you're not just realizing all these things in an empty void where it's like, oh, this is all unraveling, and I'm understanding more of it, but then there's also, I'm seeing more to learn. It's more like actually that's happening, but it's not an empty void. It's because you feel the intimate relationship with the creator of the universe giving this information to you.
Yes.
And it's literally like a warm relationship that you would have with a father or a friend or something like that.
Yeah, beyond any other relationship. And that's interesting you bring that up, because that's something my mother actually taught me to pray for. Ever since I was very young, I would always bring up really interesting questions that she couldn't always necessarily answer, but what she told me to do was pray for wisdom. So ever since I was a young boy, that's one thing I always prayed for was wisdom, not for materialistic things, but to understand. And I do feel like God has blessed me with a lot of understanding. I do feel like that's one of the most valuable things you could possibly ask God for. And He also has no problem blessing you with it. If He blesses you with a ton of money, who knows, you might turn away from Him. You know what I mean? But blessing you with wisdom can't really go wrong for the most part. So it's one of the most foolproof things you can ask God for.
That was actually something my dad told me a lot about too. He repeated this at various points throughout my life where he said King Solomon prayed for wisdom more than anything
Yes,
else.
and that's why God blessed him so much.
And he became known as the wisest king in
Exactly.
history or something.
Yeah,
So.
exactly.
Yeah, anyways, great talking with you, man.
This was awesome, man. I can't wait to do it again.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, let's see what we got here.